That lump, that's the cutest dog on the planet. Pancakes are the ideal Saturday breakfast, and here's a trick that's gonna work on any pancake recipe to make them twice as fluffy and tender. It takes barely any more effort than just making your standard pancake recipe, but it makes them so much more luxurious. From pre-made boxes to any homemade recipe, this trick really does change the game on pancakes. Okay, I'm not gonna hold this back. I'm gonna give you the tip right now, that way you can be on your way if you want. Just promise me you're gonna shout me out next time somebody asks why your pancakes are so good. Whatever recipe you use, all you need to do is separate the eggs into whites and yolks. The yolks are gonna be mixed with whatever other wet ingredients there are, but the whites are gonna be whipped separately until they form stiff peaks. Then keep them whipped until the wet batter has been incorporated into the dry. The last step is to fold the egg whites gently into that thick batter. The egg whites are gonna add a ton of air and lift to the batter, giving you a lighter, fluffier, more delicate and tender pancake. There's a bonus tip at the end of this video that may be just as important as folding in the egg whites, but it's even easier. To show you this in practice, here's a really solid recipe that I've been using for crazy good buttermilk pancakes. They're super tender, and my wife likes to describe them as silky. They're just like so melt in your mouth delicious. You're gonna need a large bowl for the dry, a medium bowl for the egg whites, and a small bowl for the wet. Into the dry bowl, add 200 grams of all-purpose flour, 7 grams of baking powder, 3 grams of baking soda, 2 grams of salt, and 30 grams of sugar. If you use unsalted butter, use 3 grams of salt instead of 2 grams. Give this a mix and then set it aside so we can work on the wet batter. To a small bowl, measure out 350 grams of buttermilk, and then you'd want to add a splash of vanilla here. I forgot until the last minute, so you're gonna see that in a second. We're gonna need to add the yolks into this container and the whites into that medium bowl from earlier. I just like to crack the eggs and let the whites run through my fingers into the bowl. Then you can toss the yolks in with the buttermilk. Now for the whipping portion. Using a whisk, whip these until they form almost stiff peaks. It's important that this is just the egg whites. Any fat from the yolks or buttermilks are gonna impede the foam production. Once solidly whipped like this, you can add your wet mix into your dry mix and begin gently folding the two together. A good rule of thumb for any pancake is to not overwork them. Melt 30 grams of butter and add that into the bowl as well. Now we can gently fold the egg whites into the mixed batter until it just barely comes together. This should still hold on to a ton of air, and there's gonna be some lumps in it as well. This is good for the rising process. For that extra bonus tip I promised you, let the batter sit for around 15 minutes so the baking soda and buttermilk have a chance to make some nice bubbles. We've got both baking soda and baking powder in here, and the baking soda with the buttermilk right now is gonna produce like one layer of rise that's gonna add to the egg white foam that we created, and then the baking powder is gonna create a second rise when it heats up in the pan, so you get these kind of like double thick pancakes. It's a beautiful thing. The more bubbles we've got now before these go into the pan, the fluffier they're gonna end up. This also gives any lumps some time to work themselves out. This is the perfect time to make some coffee and then return to the well-rested batter. Begin heating a skillet or cast iron over medium until you can drop in a little bit of butter and it should foam. It shouldn't be aggressively browning, but it should speak to you. Turn the heat down slightly to a medium-low and ladle in your batter. If you don't like crispy, buttery edges, you could use cooking oil and then wipe it out. My wife just prefers these on a dry pan, but I like the crisp of a buttered edge. They look prettier in a dry pan. You get that kind of like flat brown sheen, but they taste better with butter in my opinion. Once you start to see bubbles at the top of your batter, it's time to flip them. Cook these for another few minutes until the batter is set. If you need to, you can keep flipping them just to kind of make sure both sides are getting as much heat as they need so that they're fully cooked through. These are thicker, so they will need a little bit more time than your like classic thin pancakes. I think these are best eaten straight out of the pan, mostly because similar to a souffle, the bubbles will start to collapse. The kind of balance that we're striking between tender and fluffy is there only for a moment. Like a lot of foods, it's like an ethereal thing where it doesn't last forever. We didn't work in enough gluten to really hold a massive bubble structure, so you need to eat these quick, which is fine by me. I mean, who really wants cold pancakes anyways? My wife always has me make these with chocolate chips, but I was out today, so no chocolate chips, no blueberries, nothing like that. These are just plain straight pancakes, and I'm actually pretty okay with that. Usually I'm a big chocolate chip person, but these are pancakes that you can enjoy just on their own, and they are just as good. And that's some high praise. When you go to first like slice into these with your fork, you're gonna notice just how easily they cut. These are pancakes, so they're thick like a cake, but they are so just like tender and delicate. And I think that's more important than the fluffiness here. Yeah, fluffiness is good, but if they're fluffy and really like chewy, that's not what I want. I want these to basically just like melt on my tongue. You can pretty much just push your tongue to your roof of your mouth and they're gonna like fall apart. Put some butter on this, put some syrup on it if you're into that. My wife just eats pancakes like they're cookies, so you could do that too. And you're gonna be having a really, really good time. I'm interested, what are your favorite pancake fillings? Is it chocolate chips? Are they blueberries? Do you like them just plain like I do? Let me know in the comments down below. I want to give a massive shout out to the amazing people supporting me directly on Patreon through patreon.com/CameronMarty. They get some cool benefits for supporting the channel, and I get to keep making videos like this, so it's a win-win. Consider checking it out and becoming a patron. If you're interested in another sort of Saturday breakfast idea, check out this cereal crusted French toast. That is just as luxurious as the best pancake recipe, and you get that like outer delicious crumb crust. It's so, so good. Thanks again for watching. Glad you're here. Cheers.